after everybody else and use that as a segue into the first question. So I am Paul Wilder. I'm Dean of Engineering, Computer Programming, and Technology. And so that entails quite a bit of stuff. I'm not a business person, so I'm a little bit out of my element, but it's exciting to hear some of the discussion that we're having here today. And I can talk about the LEDs, that's good, you know. Voltage drops and current drop, that's my area. But I'm going to turn it over to the panel now. We'll start with Doug and let everybody take a quick second to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about your name.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Doug Foreman. I'm with Fringe Benefit Plans, and Fringe Benefit Plans, I'm excited because we are celebrating our 50th year and supporting our community.
You wear it well, Doug.
Yeah. I was 2 years old when we started the company, and really grown well since then. Fringe Benefit Plans, what we do is we help work with clients regarding their benefit programs. We help to, and also in HR, human resource support. We help them with recruiting, retention, and rewarding their employees through the offering of benefit programs for their employees.
Good morning, I'm Agnes Gregory. I'm tax director with Grennan Fender. We're a full-service accounting firm with offices in Melbourne and Orlando. And we'd like to say we have big firm capabilities with a small firm feel. Our firm has been around for a few decades, so it's been in the market for quite a while. We do everything from tax to assurance to accounting.
Hi, I'm Gary Cohen. I'm with End Perspective, CFO and Strategic Services, and we were founded here in Orlando over 15 years ago. That's 15, not 50. And we're in Tampa, St. Pete, and South Florida. We provide part-time CFO and strategic services, project services, and interim. So a lot of times we're working with growing companies, declining companies that can't afford a full-time CFO but want the benefits of having a CFO on board part-time. Sometimes there's an interim need due to a death or a transfer or somebody leaving, and we'll pop in. And also we'll work on projects a lot of times, even when there is a CFO who's already working 50 or 60 hours a week and needs somebody in there for 2 or 3 months to help out with another additional project. And I'm really glad to be here.
My name is Glenn Griffiths. I'm with Griffiths Wealth Strategies, and I'm affiliated with Raymond James. And an example of some of the resources we have is for Scott. He's a part of our campus over in St. Petersburg with over 3,000 employees. So to have those kind of resources available, glad he could be able to come over today and give you some information and be helpful. But I handle planning for executives and also for business owners on the investment side.
And I'm Paul Dietrich. I'm a lawyer at Swan, Hadley, Stump, Dietrich & Spears. We have one office. We're located in Winter Park. We've been around. We trace our roots back in 1924. It's kind of a tortured route, but we get there. And we're a full service commercial business and real estate law firm. We also have litigation capabilities. And what Agnes said rings true with us as well. We kind of have the capabilities of a bunch larger firms, but we're a little more nimble and fairly aggressive, and do a lot of work for individuals and small businesses to kind of assist them in their success.
Great. Okay, so I'm a UCF grad and came here for grad school. As Nasser was talking about the history of Valencia, I sat for my GRE at Valencia almost 30 years ago now. It's amazing. So the young people in the room, don't blink too many times because you become our age. And anybody who's my age knows that goes by very quickly. I'm really glad to be back in the area. I've been here for about a year now, and coming to Valencia is exciting because of the work that we do here in terms of talent development and how that impacts what you do and helps you to finish strong. And so in the vein of the talent development concept and the fact that we try to help you do what you do, we understand the success of business revolves around the workforce and the strong workforce. So I want to pose the first question to the panel. What do you see as areas that might be hindering workforce development? What are the challenges to finishing strong right now that you see? And anybody can take that question.
I think one of the biggest ones is recruiting and retention of top talent. That's what we're hearing feedback from our clients, is trying to keep talent. It's such a tight workforce out there, such low employment. So that's probably the biggest factor. Is it's so costly when you have turnover, especially in leadership role. So costly in trying to get the new person up to speed, loss of revenue, loss of knowledge, those type of things. So that's probably the biggest area I see here.
And the need to tie in those employees fairly quickly into your business to make them a part of it where they feel they're involved, and also provide incentives to stay on board, which I think you help on that to a large degree.
And when you're trying to attract that talent, I think identifying that different people, whether it's based on gender or whether Gen X or millennials or baby busters or baby boomers, have different reasons that they might want to join your company. So to identify and tailor your hiring strategy based on the people that you're trying to draw that have that top talent that you want to acquire.
Right, there's no substitute for smart people, and if you can find smart people who are also loyal to you, then you're going to enjoy a series some success over time. What we've done at our firm, and I don't know that everyone can do this, but I think you probably could do it to a certain extent, is we've invested in our employees, and to the extent that where we've kind of become more flexible in terms of their needs to advance their own careers. And so, for instance, we've hired paralegals who have told us, you know, I really like being a paralegal, but I'm interested in being an attorney. And what we've done is kind of create a flexible situation with their work time to allow them to attend law school in the evening. And for a couple of our employees, we've actually subsidized their tuition. And the level of loyalty that creates to allow them to see a path forward and not be in the way, but to create that path for them, and to also to kind of help them pay for it, has created some real substantial loyalty among several of our employees. And so if you identify the people you want to hang on to, and you want to kind of make sure that they feel a sense of loyalty to your firm or to your company, then creating something flexible for them that allows them to find a way forward can be, I think, very important.
We're doing the same thing. I mean, it's flexibility seems to be key with especially the younger generation. And we're getting to the point where we're trying to bring in people at a younger age, maybe in their junior year, and starting in the accounting department, which may be a little bit easier than starting on a tax side. So we'll kind of walk them through where they start as an intern, and they're interning with us for a year or 2 years, and then we'll walk them into that higher level role once they're done with their degrees. Flexibility, though, it seems to be the key. I mean, they want to be able to work from home. They want more PTO time. They just want that work-life balance, really, is what we're saying.
Super. Okay, so we're talking about mitigating that, those issues. Anybody in the group have some best practices they want to share?
It's not a best practice, but how do you mitigate when you have hourly factory workers that you can't give them flex time, you can't give them schedules that allow them to start or stop when they want to, and take breaks when they want to, and use production done. That's the hard part. I mean, it sounds great in an office,
Right.
but when you got 100 people out in the factory floor trying to get stuff done, it's very difficult to give them all those benefits that they want. We do other things. We pay for their health care. We pay for life insurance for them. We do some other things like that. We give training and all those other things. But we can't make it a flexible work environment out on a factory floor.
Can you maybe rotate through? Because I was a CFO for a couple of years in a manufacturing firm, and we had the same issue where we had such a broad range of people everywhere, from just the plain blue-collar factory worker to the IT developers, and it just mitigating, how do you please everybody is very difficult. But with our folks that were more or less on the floor, we kind of try to be flexible with maybe rotate through 10-hour work days, or rotate through where each one can rotate with every Friday one person has off, and the next half of the team gets the next Friday off, or just something to kind of give them a little bit more flexibility. I think it helped.
Do any of you intern programs?
Yes.
Intern?
Yes.
Yes.
So we've made a policy of kind of hiring we don't call them interns necessarily, but they're at a very early stage in their development. And typically they're people who are in a paralegal studies program, for instance. And so we do, you know, the days of law firms kind of whining and dining young attorneys and those are over. That's not, that, you know, that's, now we're much more focused, and quite frankly, the people coming up, they don't want that. They don't value that anymore, right? They want to, we're getting questions about how are you tackling the fact that I've got student loan debt, right? Which is something that most employers don't even want to go near. But that's the generation coming forward and if you want to retain people who have kind of made an investment in their own education, that's an answer, that's a question you've got to be able to answer. But to answer your question, we do internships, but most companies in my field are kind of moving away from that program.
Paul, I mean, in our construction industry, we do have apprenticeship program, which is a 4-year program, and we put helpers of fresh from the schools through that apprenticeship program. We pay for 4 years for their apprenticeship program. And after they pass, they can go for a license, electrician's license, because we are electrical contractors. After they're done, we, in 4 years, plus their journeyman license, electrician license, it cost us $6,000-7,000. You're paying their wages, which is separate. The education plus their license cost somewhere in that range, $5,000, $6,000. After they're done, there are 10 companies, especially in Florida I'm talking about, there are 10 companies, once they see that he is licensed, they offer him $30, $29, $30 an hour. And then he comes to you, sir, that's what I'm offering, can you do this for me? They give him a job for 5 months, because you do need qualified electricians to work, or qualified technicians to work on the job. When you are at the peak, your project is at the peak, you do need it. So they hire them for 5-6 months through the temp company, and they let them go. So how do you overcome that problem? I mean, you have invested $5,000-6,000, and the person who's hiring them for 5 months, and because they have a so narrow vision, they don't see that this company has invested on me. They have given 401k, holidays. No, what they're looking at, you're getting $22 an hour, he's giving me $30 an hour.
Right.
$8 an hour per hour more, which is times 40, $320 a week more, and that you want to go.
Right.
So how do you overcome that problem?
You know, I think it's difficult in large operations. You can't really mentor everybody, right? In smaller situations, you do what we would call a mentorship program, where you take an interest in people and kind of bring them behind the curtain and explain to them kind of the benefits of hanging in there, of loyalty, of what their life looks like if they remain with the firm, what their expectations might be, what benefits might be, what their territories might look like, things like that. And you give them a sense of the stability that's associated with them maintaining a loyalty to your firm. But there are always going to be people who just plain look for a higher paycheck, right? And there's a certain percentage of people who are always going to say, or who may make decisions in their personal lives that require that they accommodate the debt they've taken on, or obligations, or children, or anything. And so you're, unfortunately, in our practice as well, I mean, we at times are approached by very loyal employees who we expect to be with us for a long time, and they say, you know, I've got no choice in the matter, I've got to go. And you have to kind of accept that, but typically, the ones who leave, they've turned to us and they've said, I know I'm making a mistake. I know that I'm leaving is not in my own best interest long term. And so I think what you can do as a business is to explain to them the long-term benefits of loyalty and the long-term benefits of trying to stay a course. It's hard, though, to overcome the short-term temptations of solving a financial situation. And it's oftentimes you're not going to win that battle.
Yeah, and also when you're hiring somebody, it's very hard to look, just look at their qualifications and maybe not look at that as strongly as what their ties are to their community and how much they value being a part of that community and making that a part of the qualification of hiring somebody, which is, we don't typically do that.
I've got one question, one statement. This is a word I think we don't like to use a lot, but there's a profile employee that you have for your company. Chick-fil-A has done a masterful job of this. They don't hire everybody, and everybody's not worthy to work at Chick-fil-A. There's a profile. And I think if we have a profile, set an organization for who you think you should go after, you clean a lot of the quote-unquote riffraff out before you hire. I had to go through it. I mean, we're a technology company, and I thought, man, I need the young 25-year-old person right out of school, ready to go because I can get them at a low entry wage. And boy, I can have a lot of margin in bills and so forth. But then I realized we were talking to CFOs and CEOs about business process most of the time. Well, these people weren't seasoned enough out of college to understand what the business process should look like. Oh, by the way, it's a virtual world. I would think they would love that. No, they wanted to come in the office and see people and rub elbows and talk. And I ended up finding, for a project manager, the perfect profile for me was a 42-year-old woman who had a couple of kids who wanted to work from home and have flexibility because she could cook dinner and do laundry while she's on the phone with somebody from India. It was a perfect profile, and I got 5 of them, and they worked fine and great, and they were appreciative of the job. It was kind of scary to use that word at first, but now I look back over it, everybody who's left has been in their 20s. The ones who stayed have been married with kids. So it's kind of weird, but I think you need to have a profile for your organization.
Yeah.
I have my human resource background from Europe, 30 years. And there is an alternative that we Americans might not like that much to retain our staff, and that is not to. What if loyalty is a thing from the past? What if loyalty is not there anymore? I love your question. I mean, we invest in all these people, and then they leave. In Europe, we see another trend. We see that we don't expect to retain them for too long. It's a different paradigm. It's a different mindset, and I know it's provocative to many of you. But the deal is, if you do that, you can gear your human resource politics, your retainment politics, even your recruitment politics, to do other stuff. That means we have Alan coming in. We only expect him to be here 6 months, year, 2 years. And that's what we see in Europe a lot. Subcontracting, part-time workers and all that. And obviously, I mean, what we say all the time when we hear that is that won't work because we won't get the quality. And that might be true. Also, they will leave and they will take the customers. That might be true too. But maybe at one point, if we can't retain them, or if it becomes too expensive, we might look in that direction. And what companies do in Europe when they do this is that they obviously have to invest a lot in the quality control, right? So you're using subcontractors and all that. The good news is that you only pay the subcontractors when you need them. If you don't need them, you don't pay them. Will they do a good job? Yes, they will, if you have the quality control. So that might be where we want to go in the future. Maybe stop talking about how we retain them and accept that we can't. Because they're 25 years old. I'm 60. I'm ex-Army. I'm loyal. That dude there, he's not loyal. He's going to be there exactly as long as he wants to. Then he's going to get the heck out of Dutch.
And that just seems to be the trend as well. It's just the younger generation does not have that loyalty that even my generation had. It's they're in and out in 2-3 years, and that's their goal. I could do 2-3 years and then see what else is out there.
All right, well, in terms of retention.
Comment? Still on retention, I think. People do not leave the company, they leave their boss. So I think if we're dealing with retention, particularly at supervisory, first level management levels, those people have to be focused upon so that they are communicating with the employees, that they have the relationship, because once your business scales, it's not a family business anymore. And your connection as the CEO or leadership team loses that translation unless it is embodied in your managers and supervisors. So people spend more time at work than they do awake, outside of work, and if they're working for a boss or a supervisor that doesn't understand their needs, doesn't give recognition, etc., they're leaving the boss, they're not leaving the company.
Excuse me.
I've got one.
I would like to comment on that too, coming from a younger person. I have an installation company where we go around and do Marriott's and Hilton's and Hamptons installation. And I agree with this gentleman here. Typically, I try to keep all the skilled labor in-house, and then all the staffing, I try to outsource to staffing companies, but I have one supervisor who me and my wife designate to keep the quality in place. But I think when it comes to a lot of young people, I see them all the time. A lot of people leave me for $1, $2. I'm paying them $18, they'll leave me for $25. But I think two things you can't teach people is culture. I think a lot of young people stay for the culture. So I've seen people that they won't leave my company because of the culture that we print. We're very young, we're very hands-on. You're shorting your light bill, here's $200, don't worry about it. And I feel like you can't teach people ethics and principles. So if somebody doesn't have ethics and principles, they're gonna leave you, because there's clients of mine, they'll give me $1,000 for a job, and then they'll want me to do X amount more work for $800, but I won't leave them because it's just my ethics, my principle. We've been doing business together all this time. Why would I leave him just because he has a shorter string, you know? So I mean, from my point of view, I just think it has to do a lot with their ethics. If they're gonna leave you, they had intention to leave you from the beginning, because now they really wanted to see you grow. I have a guy that's known me since it was just me and him, and now that we're up to 18 employees, he's still there with me. But then I got guys all the time who call me all the time, hey, can you give me $1 or $2 more? I'm gonna leave you. And then they leave me. But there's their ethics and there's their principles.
How often do you,
I think we have one more.
Yes, the gentleman is a manufacturer. I remember reading, I can't remember the name of the company. There was a manufacturer who, let's say they were making 100 widgets a week. And the owner thought they could make 120. So what he got everybody together and said, if there's no failure rate, and you can make 140, you can go home at the end of each day when you finish. Within 6 months, they were going home at 2 o'clock. And he had the ethic not to increase it because he was already doing better. And so you can actually sometimes empower your employees to make those improvements down the line. They get the same money for working less. You know, with the production line, it depends on the production line, and their quality improved. So I think you can actually, older workers, younger workers, they can get a better life if they have more free time, if they're doing a better job. And that way, they're self-motivated as opposed to Big Brother watching them.
sure, incentivize the process?
Yeah.
Great. Okay, how often do your clients survey their team members to identify what they value most in the benefits package? And how do you do that? Is it surveys? And how do you validate whether they're being truthful?
I think that'd be a great
What was
question.
that question?
Sorry. How often do your clients survey their team members to identify what they value most in their employee benefits package? Do you use a survey, or how do you do it? And how do you validate that the employees are being truthful?
I think that'd be a great question for the group.
Yeah, we're going to open it up.
Yeah.
Here, too, so. Anybody want to comment here?
I want to make like an additional sort of sidebar comment. Is I think a lot of times the employees don't even realize the value of the employee benefits. I know where I've been CFO before I did consulting, we would have a grid that showed, here's your salary, here's the value of what we pay in taxes for you, here's the value of your health care plan, your 401k, here's what your 2 weeks off. If you're making $52,000 a year, make the math easy, it's $1,000 a week. You get 2 weeks off, that's worth $2,000. 5 sick days, that's worth $1,000. Here's the total value of your package, so they understand. You know, maybe you're not making just $52,000. When you add all the benefits in, it might be $70,000. So I think that's something that the employees need to be aware of when they're considering staying or leaving. What do they value the most? That's another question.
We do engagement surveys twice a year.
Twice a year?
We use a third-party company that does it. It's all hospitality industry, when your turnover is creeping to 50%, you really have to monitor why people are leaving you. To Gary's point on HR and payroll report up through me, through our automated payroll lab now, we put exactly what the employer is paying for their portion of benefits right on their paycheck every pay period. So it's right up in their face every pay period. But we also do, the engagement survey both talks about their bosses, benefits, engagement. In today's world with millennials, engagement is probably one of the most important things that you can have.
We began doing that.
And that's actually part of the bonus structure as well, to all executives throughout the entire company, at the property level and at the corporate level. It's part of their bonus structure.
Yeah, we began doing that as well. You mentioned kind of explaining to your employees the expenses that the employer is engaged in and has to take on just to keep them employed. It's surprising how people are not really mindful of how expensive it is to employ someone, and it's important. It done the right way, it can be presented in a way where it's part of the package, but it's also an appreciation for our loyalty to them, our commitment of resources to them to kind of to maintain that employment. So we've done more of kind of letting people again see the more information, I think, than otherwise we would have. On surveys, we'd like to do more surveys before we hire them, honestly. But with 3% unemployment, it's tough, right? So because you've got to be nimble in your hiring. Anybody that you'd like to hire is also, there's 10 other companies that would like to hire them as well because they're somebody you'd like to hire and they're hard to find. And so you don't have the luxury necessarily of waiting for the results of a survey to come back. But once we have them in-house, our administrator is a great believer in doing kind of personality surveys and working with people on their and then identifying what their strengths are, and what they and how we might be able to kind of cater to those strengths to make them more empowered or feel more loyalty to the group. And it's important also to recognize that over time people change, and so we do those surveys on a fairly every 5 years. We try and do them with our staff, and because again, people's priorities change, and sometimes their personalities evolve, and the things that are important to them when they were 25 would not be the same when they're 40, and so we try and kind of keep up to date on where they are.
Great. Yeah, one follow-up. I liken the employee-employer relationship is in some ways is like a marriage. So stick with me here for a moment. But you're like, what? So if you imagine, you say this is a great employee, you have a little courtship, you get married, you hire them, and that first day you say, hey, you're great, wonderful, thanks for coming on board. And if you liken that to your marriage, let's say you get married and you say, hey, I love you, but then you don't say anything more to them after that, and you don't have that communication and these feedbacks that you have going back and forth. You don't have that with your employee. But what would happen with your marriage if you said on your marriage day, I love you, spouse, and then you never told him you loved him again? Probably wouldn't last very long. So you have to have this feedback going back and forth, and sometimes not every employee, Jim Donla's not like your every line employee he was talking about, but for your key folks, I think that feedback is important in communication.
Let's pivot to taxes. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act created significant opportunities for businesses. Can you share some of the key areas where business owners can take advantage of opportunities to finish strong while saving on taxes?
That one, I guess.
Be a tax partner.
Well, two of the big things that the act changed was the R&D credit. It really made that permanent. For a few years there, we were literally going and just waiting for the IRS to say yes or no on the R&D credit. They made that permanent so we can plan for a little bit better. Take advantage of it if you can. It's more than just inventing new products. It's a way wider definition than that for the IRS, so it's anything from process improvements to product improvements. it's a wage-based credit, so you do have to be able to analyze the wages of who's spending their time on improvements. But that's a big thing. And then the other big thing is really the qualified business income deduction. There is a phase out for it for between $321 and $421,000. So for those individuals that have passed through income from their businesses that are in that $350,000 range, where we can kind of adjust for it at the end of the year, whether it's through additional 401k contributions or buying equipment at the end of the year, they'll give you some more depreciation deductions, just things like that. The planning really is becoming important towards the end of the year. So for a key number of individuals.
Changes in salary versus distribution
Yep.
will impact
Yep.
that greatly, and you have to plan in advance in regard to the type of retirement plans you're going to have available to be able to take advantage of that and to change it to make sure you're with that. You certainly don't want to be in that at that $420,000
Right.
number. You can get it managed where you're going to have a lot better tax benefits.
Is it time to revisit C Corps?
You know, we had that question from several clients this year, and it sounds great. You know, their rates are a lot lower than they used to be, but when you look at it long term, that
Can you repeat
decision,
that?
What was the question?
Is it time to revisit C Corps?
Oh, C Corps.
that once you make the election to be a C Corp, it's very hard to unwind it without a huge tax effect to it. And in the end, when you're looking at the numbers, it's, yes, C Corps have a nice, 20-some-odd% tax rate, but that's federal rate. You have to add Florida rate on top of that. And then you also have to consider how you get your money out of C Corp. So when you look at all of those things, the number still doesn't make any sense. So if you're able to be a pass-through entity, the most favorable treatment is still be the S Corp or the partnership.
Okay. With low interest rates, many are looking at real estate investments, commercial, industrial. How does the new Section 199A deduction help or hinder owners in terms of rental properties?
You guys wanna take it? Rental typically does not qualify for the new deduction, the QBI deduction. It does have to be a trade or business income. Rental typically doesn't qualify. If you own a building that you're using to operate your production out of, so it's a self-rental more or less, that does qualify. So don't let that hinder you from buying a building, because it does still work on that. Other than that, there are some safe harbors with how do you get rental to qualify as a trade or business. If you're just doing triple net leases, most likely it's not going to qualify. Obviously, if you don't do a triple net lease, you're giving up a whole lot of other things. So don't let that tax tail wag the dog, I guess. But yes, you can make it work, especially if it's a property that you're looking at, you want to own a building, and you're just going to rent it back to your operating entity anyway.
If I may, what if you just have raw land and you're renting that raw land out to another entity?
It's going to be very, very, very hard to qualify that one as a trade or business.
Any other opportunity?
No, not really. I mean, it's unproductive income, really. I mean, you're not doing a whole hour, it's passive, unfortunately.
I think at least in my business, the single greatest tax change that I've ever seen in my lifetime happened in 2018 with the opportunity zones. And I'll go into that a little bit in my presentation later, but to me, I think that's an unbelievable tax benefit for any type of developer and investor.
What was it?
Opportunity zones.
Yeah.
And we're using that greatly. I have investors that have told me that until that law changes, that they will only invest in opportunities. And as a developer, I'm using that to get capital cheaper than any capital that you can find anywhere, probably in the world. Now, I'll go into some details of how we're using that, and it's incredible. I don't know how much you guys know about it, but if you don't, I can talk a little bit about it. I'm sure you can.
Go for it. No, it's very specialized. For a certain amount of people, yes, it does absolutely make sense. For overall general clients we have, it doesn't seem to, but obviously you guys are very specialized in what you do, and it makes total sense for you to do it.
And pretty much just high level, if you develop in an opportunity zone, which they're designated by state, you can defer capital gains. So if you have a capital gain, let's say I sell something, I have $1 million capital gain, I could take that $1 million, invest it in a property that's in an opportunity zone, and that capital gain goes away forever. Forever. If you hold that investment for 10 years.
And by the way, it doesn't have to be real estate you're selling, it's pretty
No,
much
it's
any
any
gain that
gain.
you're looking at, so.
So it's, and then if you hold that for 10 years, the gain on your new $1 million that you put in there is also gone forever.
Can you,
Yeah, we
we
can
can
hear
hear
you.
you.
He asked if it has anything to do with 1031. It's better than 1031. It kills 1031. 1031, you're just referring here, you're eliminating.
So opportunity zones are normally like the low income zones, or?
It depends. I mean,
A lot of
yes
them,
and no.
Development.
Primarily, yes. I mean,
Designated,
we're doing a project in Greenville, which is right in the heart of downtown Greenville, which is an opportunity. So
Yeah, there's one, Division Street down in Soto area, which I'm involved in, has one, it runs up in 2, 3, 4 months, but it's a highly redevelopable area. If you're looking for some projects, it's the whole Division Street.
How do you identify these opportunities?
Just
You go online, is
Yeah,
it?
just put the ad, you just Google opportunity zone, put in the address, and you have your answer.
They have GIS maps all around the.
And you don't necessarily have to start your own. There's funds out there that are specifically made for opportunity zones. So if you have capital gains coming off of whatever you just sold and you don't necessarily need the use of those funds, you can just go out there and invest into an existing fund already.
I put it into an opportunity zone investment?
Right.
Yes,
Right.
And then those funds invest in other projects, so you don't have to direct invest, you can direct invest through a fund.
Agnes, I have a question regarding other tax benefits on commercial real estate. I find it amazing that more accountants don't scream at the top of their lungs to do cost segregation for property owners.
We do scream at the top of our lungs. Some people choose not to listen.
But it's amazing
But yeah.
how many property owners, business owners simply take straight line depreciation on these assets when there are massive benefits to doing that
Yep.
study.
There is, and I mean, this year we unfortunately kind of lost bonus depreciation on some improvements. But yes, that was a big thing with our clients going back a couple of years before last year, is that bonus depreciation is around also. So that just exasperates everything so much more because you get so much more of a deduction up front when you do a cost segregation study.
Agnes, can you give them a little example of some of the assets that, when you segregate it, provide that big benefit for them? Yeah.
You're looking at bigger buildings, commercial buildings, so you look at, say, dealership or a medical building or things of that nature where you're running specific, say, wiring to run different equipment. That wiring, even though it's part of the building, you can carve that out so that it's actually part of the equipment now. So the cost segregation study, all it does is basically looks at the components of the building and decides, okay, that light over there is extra light. That's not necessarily needed to be part of the bone structure of the building, so that extra light actually you can depreciate over 5 years versus 39 years. So all it does is just componentizes the building. And then we can take shorter depreciation lives and quicker recapture your investment, really.
How are lower interest rates impacting multiples on the sales price of businesses and an owner's decision on whether to sell at this time?
I think it provides capital. It's providing the access to capital and also the ability to increase the multiples, I think, that people have been receiving. I think I'd be curious. I don't know, it's kind of putting you on a spot, but I'd be curious to see how you've seen it. Yeah.
I mean, large equity firms, they look at how many turns of debt they can pull off in an economy, and the more turns of debt, like right now, it's around 4 to 5 turns of debt on a substantial, up to middle market businesses, and if they're turning 4 to 5, then they can contribute another 1 or 2 turns of equity, and all of a sudden you're at a 7 times multiple on EBITDA, which is good, for a lot of traditional businesses. So that's how it all relates together.
Right. And people who are selling need that, because when they're coming out on the other side to see how they're going to reinvest their assets, where you have to take less risk when you're accessing your funds rather than accumulating, the options there are definitely limited these days.
Another addition is historically strategic buyers have always paid more than private equity financial-minded buyers, and in the last year or so, we found that private equity has stepped up and been a bit more competitive than a lot of strategics, and I think that's why. Well, the reason being, strategics are kind of more into the risk of where they are in the economic cycle, and maybe it makes better sense to grow organically and invest internally than acquire. But private equity, their model is to raise funds and deploy funds and borrow funds, and they just can feasibly pay higher multiples than what strategics are typically willing to do. So it's an interesting dynamic right now.
Yeah, it's changed where the funding is coming from tremendously.
A question on the opportunity zones. How long after you sold your business or an asset do you have to reinvest into the opportunity zone?
You know what, I don't know off the top of my head. I still have yet to find one client to actually do it. So I'm not sure what it is. Probably you off the top of your head?
I'm not sure, but I think it's 3 months. I know it's 6 months and then another 6 months. It's very similar to the 1031.
It's a fairly short amount of time.
Okay, what tips can boost top line sales? Anybody?
Well, I think there's things you do with your team and things you do with yourself. And with your team, you need to look at what the successful salespeople are doing in your organization, get with them, and make sure that the people who maybe aren't doing quite as well know what those tips are. Also, if you're in a service type company or whatever type you are, you can review your old prospects. There may be some that you've sort of let go by the wayside. You haven't been touching with them enough. Internally, I know for me, I'm a distance runner. I get up and run every morning. My energy level's high. If you're able to start your day with a higher energy level, you're probably going to commit to trying to figure out things that are more difficult, and finding new customers is one of those. And also taking some time to think about this either at the beginning or end of your day, and to actually take that strategic plan that hopefully you have in place and keep implementing chunks of it on a regular basis.
Any other thoughts? Okay, we're running out of time now, so we'll do a last question here and kind of open it up to the group. So, like 85% of the jobs in 2030 have yet to be invented. So when you think about the fact that this is a possibility, what are things that are being phased out? What do you think about the jobs that are in existence now? And how are we going to prepare for that? And how does that fit into the idea of continuing to finish strong? Open to the panel first, and then
Automation,
go around.
seems like.
Yeah.
Everything's being automated as much as possible. We have so many tools now. Just with me being in a manufacturer, I can give you a specific example. Is we had so many people just do manual processes. We ended up actually developing our own system that just eliminated all these manual matching and manual order processing. That it was just phenomenal. We went down from 250 employees to 80.
Wow.
And it was a lot to do with automation.
That's a good example.
I think to what Agnes said, to take a look at what you're doing manually and how it might change, and this does involve a lot of thinking. When you think of going through a grocery line and the cashier used to type everything in, then it went to the cashier standing there and just scanning it, and now you've got one person and there's 10 people going into Walmart, we all scan our own stuff, and somebody watches to make sure we scan it and then we leave. So look at what you're doing and get with your team and creatively try and think about how automation might come. And this involves a lot of brainstorming and thinking outside the box.
Scott definitely hit on this, and that is the aging of the population and the impact of how many jobs are going to be created associated with that. And the ones that are going to be here 20 years from now is the last of the baby boomers, or I'm the last year of the baby boomers. So basically 20 in 10 years I'll be retiring, and the last of the baby boomers will be retiring. So all of those jobs associated with taking care of us as we become a little bit needier in our older age it's going to be a big percentage of those jobs.
Right now, in this country, more than 50% of the jobs opening are in AR and AI, not in coal mining. And country is going down the tube, unfortunately. We were number one when I came to this country 53 years ago. Nobody could compete with us technology-wise. Right now, we are number 4. China, India, Russia took over us. We are number 4. And Iran is right behind it. So unless we invest in STEM literacy in this country, we are in serious trouble, especially when they are getting graduates from abroad, the limitation. We are in serious trouble. China and India are way ahead. I would say, if you are interested, think about how you will manage those of your businesses using technology. Before you know, all the truck drivers are going to be automated. What are they going to do? So that's where the future is going.
I have a question too, because most of the folks here in this room, and I'll look at Tim Fisher, because Tim sold his company. I was a part of a much larger one. But the folks who are running businesses in this room here are in their 40s and 50s. So 2030s, at the back end of your working life. What do some of you think in your organizations? What do you think your business plan needs to focus on for 2021? That's anticipating what's going to be happening in the next 5 years, because this is all on your watch. So when you're saying 85% of the jobs haven't been invented yet, and then you think about the ones that are in existence today that are going away, that's impacting you right now. So I'm going to throw back to Tim, because he's in the middle of
yes,
this.
and I think, we try to look at that too, because in some ways, we manufacture equipment. So it's, it's steel, it's welding, it's painting, it's assembly. And when you look at that now, how are you going to weld something 5, 10, 15 years from now? The way we do it now is pretty antiquated in the grand scheme of it. So it's going to be a different way. What is that way? And we rely a lot on we work with Valencia, we work with Lake Tech, some of the schools, because that's the next generation. At the same time, trying to stay on top of technology and understand that the way that we paint things now is different than it's going to be 10 years from now. And nanotechnology and all this stuff. In some ways it's scary, but that's the reality. That's where it's going to get. We're headed in different directions than we are right now. So you've got to be able to adapt to it, because even robotic welding, which is a step in the direction, but it's it's constantly changing. You've got to be open for that change, because if you're not willing to adapt to it, you fall behind.
Yeah, how many of you have heard or spoken this a general statement like this in your company? Is well, that's the way we do it. That's the way it's always been done.
That's what Sears said.
That's
what Sears said.
Yes.
Who?
Sears.
Oh, Sears. Yeah.
That's what they said.
That's the way we've done it.
That's the problem.
That's probably one of the
Change is here to stay, whether we like it or not.
I'd like to make a big picture comment. I think since we're trying to finish strong and get the year off to a good start, and that's, once we have our strategic plan in place and we've done our SWOT analysis and identified our internal strengths and weaknesses and our external opportunities and threats, then the question is, all of us are trying to grow our businesses, grow our bottom line, and at some point in time exit with a larger business that's worth more. And how, do we grow it organically, or do we grow it through acquisition, or do we do some type of combination? And I think it's real important that we look at the advantages and disadvantages of both. And if we're trying to acquire a company, it may have that innovation that we need and that new R&D, and may have new markets. They may have great talent. It's fast. And then on the other side, It could be that, as a young man mentioned over here, there's a couple of things. There's the IT and information technology could be different, and there could be different cultures that are within these companies. So we need to see how our growth strategy maybe integrates these two elements. What is our growth strategy? If we're going to try to acquire someone, does it fit into it or not? Is it efficient? Could we do it ourselves? Is there some combinations? Could we work with them in a partnership and try to figure out what's the best way to grow our company so we finish strong and we get the next year and the next 3 years off and rolling?
And with that, Jeff, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Yeah, thank you guys.